The moment you begin explaining your boundaries to someone who keeps crossing them, something subtle shifts. You may think you're being mature, patient, reasonable, but what you're actually showing is how much you are willing to tolerate. And the wrong people don't misinterpret your limits. They test them. They watch how often you repeat yourself. They calculate the price of ignoring you. And if that price is low, they will step over the line again. Think about how many times you replayed the conversation afterward. I should have spoken better. I should have been clearer. I should have stayed calmer. But the result never changes because the problem was never your explanation. It was your expectation. Stoicism teaches something uncomfortable and liberating. You are responsible for your character, not for persuading others to recognize it. You control your reaction, not their respect. The moment you stop negotiating your dignity is the moment your strength starts returning. Strength. If you are here, it is because a part of you is tired of performing strength and ready to embody it. If you value clarity without cruelty, boundaries without resentment, and discipline without drama, you are in the right place. Consider subscribing, not as a favor to this channel, but as a commitment to the version of yourself that refuses to live as a reaction ever again. Disrespect is never random. It is a test. When someone interrupts you repeatedly, makes subtle jokes at your expense in front of others, dismisses your opinions, or continues pushing your boundaries in small but deliberate ways, they are not simply careless. They are observing. They are collecting data. They are silently asking, how far can I go with this person? And the way you respond becomes their answer. Most people think disrespect comes from emotion. They assume it arises from anger, misunderstanding, or stress. Sometimes it does, but more often it is strategic. It is a probe, a gentle push to measure your resistance. If there is no resistance, the push intensifies next time. Think about the last moment someone crossed a line with you. Maybe they spoke over you during a meeting. Maybe they laughed at something personal you shared. Maybe they made you feel small in a room of people. What did you do? Did your heart race and you fired back in anger? Did you try to explain yourself carefully so they would finally understand? Or did you lower your eyes, remain silent, hoping it would pass? Every reaction teaches them something. Anger shows you are emotionally invested. Silence shows fear of confrontation. Long explanations show a desire for approval. And needing approval is the easiest handle to seize. Much of the pain in these moments is not only from the insult itself, but from the story you tell yourself about what it means. That story drives your reaction. And your reaction becomes the blueprint they study. Need is leverage. The moment someone senses that you need them to view you as good, reasonable, or worthy, the balance shifts. You may believe that if you explain yourself clearly, they will respect you. But if respect depended on explanation, it would have happened already. When you over-explain, you are not strengthening your boundary. You are softening it. You are, without intending to, signaling that your limits are negotiable. That is why the disrespect continues. It is not confusion, it is feedback. The more you react predictably, the more predictable you become. Predictability hands control to the other person. This is where an internal shift begins. Instead of reacting like a student taking a test, you start observing like the examiner. You begin noticing patterns. You stop asking, why are they doing this to me? And start asking, what are they trying to gain? Attention, superiority, a reaction? Once you recognize the pattern, your emotional temperature changes. You are no longer trapped in the moment. You are outside it, studying it. When you pause, even briefly, you interrupt the test. You stop providing instant data. There is power in that pause. Not dramatic power, but quiet power. The kind that does not need to prove itself. When someone makes a cutting remark and you do not rush to defend yourself, something subtle occurs. You are not submitting. You are assessing. You are deciding if the comment deserves space in your mind at all. When you truly understand that disrespect loses some of its sting, it becomes information rather than injury. You start to see that the person testing you is revealing more about themselves than about you. The discomfort remains because sometimes their words land near an insecurity you already carry. That is why some insults sting while others feel meaningless. Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." When disrespect touches a deep wound, it often hits where you have not fully healed. Recognizing this is not weakness. It is clarity. When you know your sensitive spots, you become harder to manipulate. You no longer react from surprise, you respond from awareness. The real shift is not in crafting clever comebacks. It is about changing your internal posture. You stop seeking validation in every interaction. You stop assuming fairness will protect you. You start seeing social dynamics as energy exchanges. When someone disrespects you, they are offering a transaction. They provoke, hoping to buy a reaction. If you give anger, apology, or desperation, the transaction completes. They feel powerful. But when you respond with calm observation or facts, the transaction fails. The expected energy does not arrive. That absence speaks louder than any argument. This does not mean becoming cold or cruel. It means becoming deliberate. You choose when to engage and when to withdraw. You respond with clarity, not with emotion. If someone says you never help, you state what you have done. If someone says you are too sensitive, you acknowledge their perspective without adopting it. You do not try to convince or win. You quietly hold your ground. Over time, this consistency changes perception. The test loses its reward. Disrespect continues only where it finds access. When you stop reacting automatically, stop explaining your worth, and stop needing others to understand you, the dynamic shifts. It may not happen instantly. They may push harder at first, testing if the old response returns. But if your internal posture remains steady, the pattern breaks. You are no longer participating in their script. You are writing your own. Once you begin responding like the examiner, the test loses power over you. The first shift is clinical detachment. Not coldness, not cruelty, detachment. There is a difference. Coldness is emotional shutdown. Cruelty is revenge. Detachment is clarity. It allows you to step back mentally and observe without being consumed. Imagine a scientist watching a reaction in a lab. Chemicals bubble, colors change, reactions intensify. The scientist does not panic. They observe, record, adjust. That posture is what you cultivate. The next time someone disrespects you, notice your first impulse. The mind wants to ask, how could they do this to me? That keeps you at the storm's center. Instead, gently replace it with, what are they trying to gain? Attention, validation, control, a reaction? Shifting focus from wounded pride to the mechanics of interaction cools your emotional temperature. You begin to see behavior as strategy rather than attack. When the usual reaction disappears, they press harder. It is like pressing an elevator button that does not light. You press it again, harder, in frustration. In relationships, this appears as sharper words, louder accusations, more dramatic behavior. The escalation is not proof of failure. It is proof the old reward system is breaking. The pattern is searching for its payoff. Returning to old reactions resets the test. Staying steady shifts the energy. They realize the usual methods no longer work. They may not admit it, but they feel it. The emotional hooks no longer catch. Clinical detachment also protects your internal state. Reacting impulsively causes replay and regret. Detachment reduces that inner noise. You respond deliberately. Even if they remain difficult, you keep self-respect. Over time, this posture becomes natural. You do not have to force calm. You listen, evaluate, choose. Disrespect may continue, but it no longer defines the exchange. You study chaos rather than fight it. When you study long enough, you see that power was never about changing them. It was about mastering your own response. That mastery becomes the quiet center around which everything else turns. Detachment is the foundation. From that steady ground, you can decide how much energy you invest, how much access you give, and whether a relationship deserves continuation. When you stop reacting as before, you interrupt their reward system. Patterns that once worked in their favor now fail. They pressed guilt buttons, provoked, criticized, and your reactions gave them energy. Remove the reaction and something breaks. The familiar loop stops. Behavior intensifies initially. This is not failure. It is evidence that the old system no longer works. Pressing the same button repeatedly without response leads them eventually to stop. Human behavior follows patterns. When someone is used to emotional reactions and suddenly receives none, they push harder. This spike is called an extinction burst. In toxic dynamics, it can feel overwhelming. Rumors resurface, old mistakes are brought up, accusations fly. Many fold here thinking, I made it worse. But you did not make it worse. You made the old pattern ineffective. Intensity rises, but if you remain steady, the pattern collapses. Emotional regulation transforms chaos into information. Escalation is predictable. Jung said, "What you resist persists. React emotionally and you feed it. Respond with clarity and restraint and you starve it." That does not mean tolerating abuse. It means not giving the reaction the other seeks. You stay centered, speak simply, limit engagement to facts, and step away when necessary. Inner discipline becomes visible. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True freedom is mastery of your impulses in tension. Anyone can remain calm in easy situations. True test is composure under pressure. That composure signals boundaries are not dependent on approval. Seneca said, "He who angers you, conquers you." In extinction bursts, if you lose control, old patterns win. If you remain steady, they begin to collapse. Repetition is necessary. Eventually, pressing the button becomes exhausting. They either change tactics or seek easier reactions. This stage feels lonely. You may question yourself, feel misunderstood, but clarity grows. You recognize that prior reactions were attempts to restore comfort, not strength. Stability is quiet. It does not announce itself. It holds its ground. Extinction bursts are also about you. Your habits protest change. Your mind craves the familiar script. Remaining steady retrains you as much as it retrains them. Each calm response strengthens a new pattern within your character. Over time, spikes fade, intensity loses force, the other adjusts or moves on. You stand steadier, not louder, not harsher. Escalation becomes evidence you disrupted the old cycle. You did not worsen it, you made it unsustainable. From this ground, focus shifts inward. Responses become simpler, reduced to facts. Disrespect thrives on emotional language. Selfish, dramatic, lazy, useless, irresponsible. Labels provoke. They are hooks. Arguing with them keeps you in their frame. Respond with what is concrete. If told, "You never help," state the facts. "I did the dishes. They're in the rack." Nothing more. If told, "You are too sensitive," respond, "That's your perspective," then return to your actions. Energy drops. You did not accept their label or attack theirs. You stepped out of the exchange. Without friction, there is no fire. Most arguments persist because both sides fuel the flames. Remove fuel, flames fade. This is not suppressing your voice. It is choosing when to use it. Calm facts carry strength. Restraint carries authority. Refusing to argue about identity carries power. Complexity signals insecurity. Long defenses, sarcastic comebacks, dramatic rebuttals reveal inner unrest. Measured brevity signals stability. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Disturbance begins in interpretation. Treat labels as noise. Remain steady. Some words still sting. That's the next layer. Why do some insults echo long after? It is rarely about the present. It is old doubts, quiet fears, unhealed insecurities. Recognizing this is awareness, not agreement. If incompetent lingers, notice the part of you that feels uncertain. If unlovable shakes you, notice where that fear existed. The insult is a trigger, not the root. Once you see that, words lose power. They reveal, not define, you. Taking responsibility for growth removes leverage. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens, but how you react." Reaction includes what you choose to believe. Knowing strengths and weaknesses shields you from destabilization. Truth in criticism can be corrected quietly. Falsehood can be ignored. Decisions happen inside you, not under pressure. Calm responses reflect inner alignment. Over time, reducing responses to facts changes the dynamic. Others sense emotional tactics no longer move you. Conversation becomes less dramatic. Facts are only one layer. Beneath lies self-worth. If value depends on constant validation, facts feel like armor, not confidence. Deeper work builds self-concept resilient to shake. Respecting yourself removes need for constant proof. You speak when necessary, remain silent when strategic. Silence is not submission, it is choice. Patterns shift inside out. Reality replaces drama. Internal foundation strengthens. Disrespect loses momentum, unsupported by reaction. Practicing steady posture transforms facts into reflection of inner growth. Next transformation is deeper. Not only how you respond, but how you view yourself. Some part of you fears they might be right. A stranger calling absurd things would not land. Words only sting when they touch quiet doubt already inside. Strength is not the perfect comeback or posture. Real strength is internal clarity. When words hurt, ask which part of you reacted. Fear of inadequacy rejection, weakness, the insult exposes what already exists. Once you see that, the focus shifts inward. You are no longer just fighting them, you are examining yourself. Toxic people sense insecurity. Test with words like tapping walls to find hollows. Flinches reveal wounds. Over time, they return to triggers. Real armor is self-acceptance. Fully owning imperfections removes leverage. Saying, I am growing, I struggle, I am imperfect, is ownership, not weakness. Ownership neutralizes public shaming. Insults lose voltage. This does not halt growth. It stops pretense. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if someone can prove me wrong and show my mistake, I shall gladly change. Strength is seeing flaws without collapse. Truth in criticism is adjusted, falsehood is released, stability remains. Words become information, not identity. Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Acceptance is integration, not arrogance. You are not just your strengths. As long as you expect fairness from someone who has shown otherwise, you continue trying to educate them. Music. You keep making arguments. You keep showing evidence. Carl Jung once said, music, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you see clearly who someone is, including their limits, you are not condemning them. You are acknowledging the darkness that exists. Denial keeps you vulnerable. Awareness protects you. The moment you accept their pattern as real, you stop being surprised by it. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you separate what you can control from what you cannot. You cannot control another person's character. Music. You cannot force growth, insight, or accountability. You can only govern your own response. When you release the expectation of change, you free yourself from the cycle of disappointment. You no longer measure progress by their improvement. Music. You measure it by your steadiness. That steadiness becomes your anchor. Music. This choice happens once, but its effects ripple outward. You may still feel emotion, you may still feel sadness or frustration, but the attachment to their transformation is gone. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop imagining the day they finally understand. You accept that their path is their responsibility. Music, not yours. And in that acceptance, something in you relaxes. Life after this shift looks different. You become practical. If someone consistently disrespects you, you limit their access to your time and energy. If someone repeatedly crosses a boundary, you reinforce it with action, not explanation. You speak music calmly. You step back when necessary. You stop trying to rescue the connection. Your peace becomes more important than their music approval. This does not mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop chasing potential. Music, you relate to what is real, and that clarity strengthens you. The pattern of disrespect weakens because it no longer finds the same emotional grip. You are not waiting for fairness. You operate based on what is, not what you wish would be. That quiet music internal final choice is the one. It is not loud, it is not announced, it is simply decided. And from that moment forward, your interactions carry a different energy. You no longer negotiate your dignity. Music. You live as though it is already secure. And when that shift settles fully, the next question naturally arises. If you are no longer waiting for them to change, what will you do with the freedom you have reclaimed? Once you make that inner decision, practical changes begin. You become selective with your energy, not music dramatically, not hostile, just selective. You start seeing that your attention, your warmth, your time, and your vulnerability are not unlimited. They are high-value assets. Music. And like any valuable asset, they should not be handed to someone who repeatedly misuses them. For a long time, you may have given freely, thinking generosity would create fairness. But when generosity meets disregard, it turns into depletion. So, you adjust. This adjustment is quiet. If someone disrespects you, access changes. Conversations become shorter. Engagement, music becomes practical. You respond to what is necessary and nothing more. You are polite but not emotionally available. Calm but not open. In the same way, you stop volunteering stories, feelings, and details that can later be music, twisted, or dismissed. It is not coldness, it is clarity. It is the recognition that connection requires mutual respect. Music, without it, depth of connection decreases. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. You might worry that you are distant or unkind, but there is a difference between kindness and overexposure. Aristotle wrote, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you know your limits, you protect them. You stop giving parts of yourself to people who treat them carelessly. This is not about revenge. It is about responsibility. You are responsible for the energy you invest and the standards you uphold. This shift is not punishment. Music, it is protection. Punishment seeks to hurt others. Protection preserves yourself. Both can look similar because access decreases. But the intent is different, and that intent shapes your demeanor. When you are protecting rather than punishing, your tone stays steady. Music. There is no bitterness. There is no need to explain. You simply adjust your behavior to match reality. You engage at the level that feels safe and respectful and know music deeper. Here is the interesting part. When people realize they can no longer trigger you, music, many stop trying. The reward they once received disappears. Jokes no longer provoke. Music accusations no longer spark long debates. Drama no longer gains momentum. Some quietly move to easier targets where reactions are guaranteed. Music. Others show a different kind of respect. Not necessarily warmth, not necessarily admiration, but restraint. They sense boundaries are no longer flexible. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. You do not need to threaten." Music. You do not need to dominate. You do not need to raise your voice.